There's a strange moment that almost no one talks about. It happens at night, usually after everything is paid. Rent is covered, bills are handled, nothing urgent is waiting. And still, you don't relax. You sit down, open your phone, turn on the TV, maybe even tell yourself, I'm good today. But your body doesn't believe it. Your mind keeps scanning. Your chest stays slightly tight, as if something could go wrong at any second. This isn't stress from chaos. It's stress from maintenance. Your life looks organized from the outside. You're responsible. You're doing what you're supposed to do. You don't wake up in crisis mode, but you also never fully shut it off. Even on calm days, there's a background noise, a quiet alert system running non-stop. Did I forget something? Did I miscalculate? What if next month is harder? And the most confusing part is this. There's no clear problem to fix. You're not behind on bills. You're not drowning in debt. You're not making reckless choices. So you tell yourself you should be grateful. You tell yourself this is just adulthood. You tell yourself everyone feels this way. But deep down, you know something isn't right. Because rest shouldn't feel risky. Peace shouldn't feel temporary. And stability shouldn't require constant vigilance. If you've ever felt unable to relax, even when everything is technically fine, stay here. Because what's causing this tension isn't laziness, anxiety, or poor mindset. It's something structural. And once you see it, the feeling finally makes sense. What makes this feeling so hard to explain is that it doesn't come from danger. It comes from responsibility that never powers down. Your mind learns something over time, that nothing actually runs by itself, that every month only works because you are paying attention. Even when everything is paid, the system stays on. Because rent doesn't forgive delays. Bills don't pause because you're tired. Life doesn't care that you handled it this month. So your brain adapts. It stays slightly alert, even during calm moments. Not anxious, vigilant. You're not worried about today. You're subconsciously guarding tomorrow. This is why relaxation feels incomplete. Because rest only feels safe when the future feels buffered. And most people don't have buffers. They have timing. Everything works as long as nothing goes wrong, as long as income arrives on time, as long as costs don't spike, as long as life behaves. Your nervous system notices that fragility, even if you don't consciously name it. So it keeps scanning, keeps calculating, keeps preparing. This isn't weakness, it's adaptation. Your brain is responding correctly to a life where stability depends on constant accuracy. Miss one detail, misjudge one month, and the calm breaks. That's why weekends don't fully reset you. Vacations don't feel as light as they should. And everything is fine still feels temporary. You're not stressed because things are bad. You're stressed because things are just barely contained. And once your mind learns that pattern, it doesn't unlearn it easily. Which leads to the real problem, not financial, but structural. Here's the part most people never articulate, even to themselves. Your life doesn't feel heavy because it's chaotic. It feels heavy because it requires precision. Every month has to land correctly. Every payment has to align. Every decision has to be reasonable. There's no margin for drift. That kind of life looks stable on paper, but stability built on perfect timing is fragile, even when it's working. You don't feel free. You feel managed. Your energy isn't spent creating. It's spent maintaining. And maintenance is invisible labor. No one sees it. No one praises it. But it consumes attention quietly every day. That's why even good news doesn't fully relax you. A calm month doesn't feel like relief. It feels like luck. A smooth week feels borrowed, not earned. Because deep down, you know the truth. This system doesn't forgive randomness. One delay, one surprise expense, one interruption, and suddenly everything that worked becomes stressful again. This is why people say, I don't know why I'm tired. They're not tired from effort. They're tired from holding a life together that has no slack. Not broke, not failing, just permanently braced. And here's the quiet danger. When a life works only under perfect conditions, you stop expanding it. You stop experimenting. You stop resting deeply. You don't aim forward. You aim to not mess up. That's the moment progress freezes, even though nothing looks wrong. And once you see that, a different question starts forming. Not how do I relax more, but why does my life require constant attention just to stay upright? That question is where everything actually begins to change. At this point, most people assume the issue must be emotional, stress management, mindset, learning how to relax. But the problem isn't psychological, it's structural. Your life doesn't feel tense because you worry too much. It feels tense because there's no slack in the system. Everything you've built works, but it only works if it keeps being fed on time. Income arrives, bills leave, nothing breaks. That's not security, that's balance. And balance without margin is exhausting. Think about it this way. If your calendar had no empty space, even good events would feel stressful. If your body had no recovery time, even light effort would cause fatigue. Money works the same way. When every dollar already has a job, your future has no flexibility. When every month depends on accuracy, rest becomes conditional. This is why advice like just relax never lands, because your system doesn't support relaxation. You're not failing to feel calm. You're responding correctly to a life with no buffer. Margin isn't luxury. It's the ability to absorb randomness without reaction. Without it, your nervous system stays online, always monitoring, always anticipating. This is why people with enough money still feel tight, not because they lack income, but because their structure consumes it all in advance. And once you see that clearly, something uncomfortable becomes obvious. The tension isn't something you can meditate away. It's something that has to be redesigned. From the outside, two people can look identical. Same income, same responsibilities, same lifestyle. But internally, they're living completely different realities. One life is built on full utilization, every resource accounted for, every month optimized, nothing wasted. It looks efficient, responsible, adult. The other life leaves intentional gaps, not excess, not indulgence, just unused capacity. And that difference changes everything. In the first life, calm depends on things going right. In the second, calm exists even when they don't. One person relaxes only after checking everything twice. The other relaxes because there's room for error. One person treats calm months as relief. The other treats them as normal. Over time, this divergence compounds, not financially at first, but mentally. One brain stays in maintenance mode. The other slowly regains creativity. One person asks, how do I make this month work? The other starts asking, what do I want this year to look like? This is why two lives that look the same eventually feel very different from the inside. One narrows, the other opens. And the shift doesn't come from earning more or trying harder. It comes from how much pressure the system carries by default. Most people never make this distinction. They assume tension is just part of adulthood. But it isn't. It's a design choice, even when it wasn't consciously made. And once you realize that, the next step stops being about money altogether. It becomes about reclaiming space.
This is where most people get confused, because they are doing everything right. They plan, they anticipate, they stay ahead of deadlines and payments, and yet the effort never eases. That's because the work you're doing isn't building, it's maintaining. You're not creating momentum, you're preventing collapse. Every action is reactive. Every decision is about avoiding disruption. That kind of effort doesn't feel heroic, it feels tiring. Maintenance has no finish line. There's no moment where you're done, just another cycle starting. This is why breaks don't restore you the way they used to, because you're not recovering from effort, you're recovering from vigilance. Your mind stays slightly alert even during rest, tracking, checking, preparing. And slowly, that becomes your baseline. You stop asking if the system is working for you, you focus on making sure you don't mess it up. That's the quiet shift most people miss. When effort stops being about growth and becomes about keeping things from slipping. Nothing is wrong, but nothing is light. And over time, even capable people start to feel fragile, not because they're weak, but because they're carrying a structure that leaves no room to set anything down. This isn't burnout from too much ambition. It's fatigue from permanent responsibility. And unless something changes structurally, rest will always feel temporary. This is the cost nobody talks about. When your life technically works, but only if you keep holding it together, you start paying with things that don't show up on statements. You lose spontaneity. You lose tolerance for uncertainty. You lose the ability to sit still without scanning for what might go wrong next. You become efficient, and efficiency slowly replaces freedom. You don't take risks not because you're afraid, but because there's no slack to absorb mistakes. You stop exploring options and start protecting what you already have. From the outside, it looks like maturity. From the inside, it feels like contraction. This is why people say, I don't know why I'm so tense. Everything is fine. Everything is fine, but nothing is flexible. And flexibility is what allows the nervous system to stand down. Once you see that clearly, the question changes. Not how do I relax, not how do I manage stress better, but what in my life requires me to stay alert all the time? That question doesn't demand immediate action. It demands honesty. And if this way of seeing life resonates, if you're tired of advice that treats tension as a mindset problem, subscribe. This channel isn't about pushing harder or optimizing discipline. It's about understanding why some lives feel heavy even when they're stable, and how to redesign them so calm isn't something you earn, but something the system actually allows. Here's the realization that quietly changes everything. The tension you feel isn't caused by chaos, it's caused by dependence. Your life depends on timing, on everything arriving when it should, on nothing unexpected asking for attention. That's why even calm weeks feel fragile, because they're calm only as long as nothing interrupts them. You're not anxious because something is wrong. You're alert because too much depends on continuity. Miss a beat and the system notices. Delay something and the margin disappears. Step out of rhythm and the pressure shows up immediately. This is the part people rarely articulate. They say they're stressed. They say they're tired. They say they need a vacation. But the real issue is that their life doesn't tolerate interruption. Rest helps, but only briefly, because the structure you return to still requires constant participation. And once you see that, the question becomes sharper. It's not about relaxation techniques. It's not about mindset shifts. It's about how much of your life collapses if you stop managing it for a moment. A system that needs you awake all the time will never let you feel truly calm. That's not a personal failure. That's a design problem. And the moment you recognize that, the idea of just pushing through quietly loses its appeal. Because pushing only works when the system eventually gives something back. Real relief arrives not the moment you slow down. It arrives when the system stops requiring vigilance. That's why some people can rest deeply even with full schedules, while others feel tense during a free afternoon. The difference isn't workload, it's dependence. When fewer things depend on perfect timing, your nervous system finally stands down. You stop scanning the future for threats. You stop mentally rehearsing contingencies. You stop holding everything together in your head. And something subtle happens. You don't feel euphoric, you feel grounded. Decisions slow down. Reactions soften. Time feels less compressed. You're no longer rushing to preserve stability. You're operating inside it. This is why people who redesign their lives structurally don't talk much about stress management. They didn't become calmer. They became less required. Less required to monitor. Less required to anticipate failure. From the outside, nothing dramatic changes, but internally, the posture shifts. Life stops feeling like a test you're constantly retaking and starts feeling like something that can absorb you instead of the other way around. That's when calm becomes durable.
Not because you earned it, but because the system finally allows it. And once you feel that kind of calm, you realize something unsettling and freeing at the same time. The tension you lived with for years was never the cost of ambition. It was the cost of a life that didn't forgive pauses. Here's the truth most people never stop to examine. Calm isn't something you earn after surviving long enough. It isn't a reward for discipline, patience, or endurance. It's the result of a life that doesn't demand constant supervision. If your stability depends on perfect timing, if one delay creates tension, if one surprise forces immediate correction, then what you're living isn't balance, it's maintenance. And maintenance has an expiration cost. You can rest inside it, you can adapt to it, you can even succeed inside it for a while, but you will never relax inside it. Because relaxation requires forgiveness for mistakes, for pauses, for bad timing, for being human. The uncomfortable part is this: most people aren't trapped by lack of effort. They're trapped by structures that never learned how to pause. And once you see that clearly, the choice becomes unavoidable. You can keep optimizing inside a system that needs you alert forever, or you can start redesigning the parts of life that quietly refuse to let go. Not dramatically, not all at once, but intentionally. This channel exists for that kind of thinking. Not motivation, not shortcuts, not advice that blames you for pressure you didn't create. We talk about the invisible structures that shape how life feels, even when everything looks fine on paper. If this video helped you understand why everything being paid still doesn't feel like peace, subscribe. Not because something is wrong with you, but because clarity is the first step towards a life that doesn't need you awake all the time. And once your life allows pauses, calm stops being something you chase. It becomes something you live inside.